What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 40, the big 4-0, here on the Whatnauts Review Show, where every week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a comic, could be a movie, could be something else. We rate it, we watch it, we do what we have to do. We come back here and talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined, as ever, by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kyle. I've been snowed into my apartment for the third day in a row.
Yeah, we didn't get much snow. We were supposed to, but we got like half an inch.
Oh my god. I think we have like 6+ inches out there. It's hefty. And it's not so terrible that I am literally stuck here, but I look outside and I'm like, no, I don't want to try.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, you could probably get to the store if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But who knows? Yeah, it did not snow much. It was supposed to snow all day yesterday and today, and it's not. So, there you go. Disappointing, kind of. Yeah, let's see. I mentioned this is episode 40.
Yes.
What are we talking about this week? We are talking about a little graphic novel called Essex County by Jeff Lemire. He did the art and he wrote it. And it was an interesting book. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. But if people out there have not heard of this, have not read it, let's break it down for them really quickly and just kind of describe what it is, what the basic plot thing is, and then we'll get into our spoiler section after that.
Yeah. Essex County is an area in Canada. I think Ontario, Canada, maybe. It's all
the same to me.
It's kind of on the other side of Michigan. I think at one point they described themselves as really not being terribly far away from Detroit.
Yes.
But it's this little rural community in Canada. And the graphic novel, it was 3 short stories about just different people and their lives centering around this tiny rural community. And then this graphic novel includes some bonus materials, little short stories that were supposed to be included and were deleted, but he put them in for this nice published version.
Yeah, I think we read the deluxe version, which is the one that's on Comixology Unlimited.
Yeah, it's a really great deal. It's not terribly long, but it's long enough that you're like, boy, I got this for free. Hooray.
Yeah.
A great bargain.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's 3 short stories. The first one centers around this kid who's really into superhero comics, and the person that's raising him, they can't really connect, and so the story is kind of about him making a new friend and learning to grow up, is kind of what it's about. The second one is about this older gentleman who is deaf and has Alzheimer's. So he's kind of going in and out of lucid moments.
Yeah.
And he's trying to, he's realizing this is happening, and so he's trying to recount the story of his life and everything that he's lost. And that one I think was the longest one. That was
definitely.
I don't want to say main story, but that one had the most meat.
Yes, it had 3 different parts to it.
Yeah. And then the last one is the story about the small town nurse, and just kind of making her house calls.
Yeah.
Taking care of the locals. And just it's very much a slice of life of her life, and at the same time we get the story, I think it's of her great grandma.
I think
either
so,
her grandma or her great grandma, and how she kind of came to live in Essex County.
Yeah. And that third story kind of pulls together some strings from the previous 2 stories and really makes it feel like this is a community. You're not just seeing 3 stories that happen to be set in the same place. There's a community that surrounds all of them.
Yeah, they all take place in Essex County, as we kind of mentioned. But the stories all kind of connect too in small ways. There's a really neat scene that I'll talk about later on, where two of the characters meet just in passing. And they just exchange a few words and then move on. And they don't know who each other is, but they're kind of related.
They are.
So it's an interesting book. It's a weird one for me, because it's a sad book.
It is sad,
and I was not expecting that. I was expecting more of like, not mystery, but like more of that Stand By Me kind of 80s, like here's a group of kids in Essex County doing their thing. But that's not what we got.
Because Jeff Lemire wrote Plutona, which we covered earlier on the show, which definitely has that vibe. And didn't he write Something You Did and I Wasn't On? Did he do Iron or the War After, or like something else?
No, he did not. The other things he's done, Sweet Tooth is another famous one of his. What you might be thinking of, Melissa, we did a book called Department H by Matt Kint, and I mentioned on that the artwork in that book looks a lot like Jeff Lemire's artwork.
Okay, I thought there was like something else you had talked about that he had written, and I hadn't read that one, and I was going to ask you, is this more like that thing?
Yeah, he's done a whole bunch of stuff. Essex County was, I guess, the first thing that like won him a bunch of awards and got like the spotlight. Hey, who is this guy? You know, but he's done a ton of stuff. Sweet Tooth is one that I've read, and I really liked that one. That's also worth checking out as well. But yeah, it was kind of a sad book.
Yeah.
That being said, though, it's despite it kind of being about moving on or loss or just this, this small town feeling, at the same time, it was all kind of okay in the end. Like, it has this very content feeling.
Yes, it feels kind of melancholy, but it's not downtrodden. Like, there is hope for everything at the end of the story.
Yeah, it's a good small town. There's a good people. They just kind of want to help out and live their lives, So it's neat. It's a good little book. Highly recommend checking it out. I mentioned we read it on Comixology Unlimited. So if you are a subscriber to that, you can go basically read it for free. It's like the Netflix of comics.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick read. I read through the whole thing yesterday afternoon, which was nice that I was reading the story set in Canada while it was snowing outside my window.
There's lots of hockey in the book, and you're like, I bet there's hockey happening outside.
Yes. So, it's like I'm in the story now.
There you go. I am the captain now.
There's a lot of panels that are wordless. So you get a lot in this book, but it's a fast read.
Exactly. If you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, you can be watching this show live every Sunday at noon Eastern time here on twitch.tv/the Whatnauts. If you are not following us on Twitch, please go do so. We could absolutely use your help. I think we have a very small, humble following of 26 followers or something like that. I'm not sure exactly. But if you can follow us on Twitch, that would be a huge help. Even if you do not usually watch the show live, that would be fantastic. Once again, that's twitch.tv/the Whatnauts. You can also catch us live on our website, thewhatnauts.com/live streams. And we put it up. If you missed the live stream, that is A-okay, because we put this up on Patreon ASAP after the live stream, so you can get it early. And then a couple days after that, we put it out to the public on YouTube and podcast services, including, drumroll please, Spotify.
Yeah.
We are now on Spotify, which is neat.
The big green one.
Yeah, we used to be on Spotify a long time ago, before you joined, Melissa. We got our RSS feed on Spotify, but we kind of abandoned that RSS feed because we were growing and we like rebranded our shows and stuff like that. So we got all new RSS feeds, and I have been slacking on getting that up back on Spotify, but I finally did. So if you guys like Spotify, if you use Spotify and you want to get all of your stuff in one spot, there you go. We're on Spotify now. So have
like
fun
all the
with
big
that.
shows.
Exactly. Let's see. I don't know what other housekeeping do we have. If you haven't checked out our 3-year retrospective, still go check that out.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. Last week, episode 39 of the review show was our first episode of 2019, in which we did all 6 of the Mission Impossible films.
So
it was a
drastic change from last week to this week.
Yeah.
This might be like the most disparate things we have done one week after another.
Maybe. I don't know. but yeah, completely different tone, stuff like that. So I'm excited to get to talk about that. I think that's it, though. Also, if you didn't know, go check out our other podcast, The Captain's Log, which you can also find on Spotify. That's just our weekly off-topic show where we do all sorts of shenanigans. I recently told a story in which I almost threw up on an ex-girlfriend of mine while having sexy time with her. So there you go. Go check that out. But yes, we are about to get into spoiler territory right now. So if you haven't checked out Essex County, go do that right now.
There's a lot to it.
We'll be here. I mean, you if you're on the live stream right now and that book was like, hey, that sounds kind of interesting, I want to check it out, we probably won't be here when you get back. But for those of you listening on listening as a podcast or watching on YouTube, we'll be here. We'll be chilling. That means, bam, spoiler alert. This is your warning. Right now, let's dive in, Melissa. Though, where do you want to begin? Because we have a couple different stories. Was there anything that stood out that you want to talk about first, or did you just want to go first story? Let's dive in there.
I want to talk about the artwork first.
Let's do it.
This is really striking artwork. You told me it was like black and white, like fairly simple line drawings, but it's very simple. And like the first story in particular, there's like no backgrounds practically. Like it's a lot of like characters in like the bare like the bare minimum to represent space. And the fact that they are out on just like a farm and it's like, okay, there's the land, that's the horizon, and there's one bird in the background. That is what the background is. That kind of lends itself to that style and representation.
Yeah.
But despite being really simple, like the faces are fantastic. They're really expressive, even with like a limited amount of lines. Like the first time you see Lester, who's the little boy who's featured in the first story, I think like you don't see his face for a little while. You're just seeing him like from a distance, or like you're seeing, you're looking at him from his back or whatever. But the first time you see his face, it's like, oh, that's a super cute, charming face, even with like very simplistic drawing. I was really impressed by it. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. I don't know if it's really a style I'd go for, but it suited these stories really well.
Yeah, it's very stylized, but you mentioned that kind of simplification of space.
Yeah.
Which I think works really well. Like if I were to picture this as a movie or as some kind of television adaptation, like they would be on some gigantic farm where they own a lot of the land and there's like nothing else around them. And so there's going to be this big sky, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be these open, like it leaves this sense of just, hey, there's nothing here, and it's almost just like there's just this empty space. There's not much to do but go play by the creek.
Yeah, and it really contributes to that sense of loneliness that's so pervasive, especially
Mm-hmm.
in the first two stories, a little bit less in the third. But yeah, it makes you feel kind of lonely and isolated and desolate.
Yeah.
But also, even if there's like a bare minimum of backgrounds, you get a very strong vibe for where the story is set.
Mm-hmm.
Even if most of the art is focused on the characters, like not just in the writing, but the art somehow. Even if portraying the tiniest amount of the actual setting, you still feel that setting.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he did it, but he did it real well.
Well, I don't know if you read the thing at the end in the like
Yeah.
author bio. Jeff Lemire is actually from Essex County, so he like has it in his bones or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's just like, I'm gonna take everything that I knew growing up and blah, there it is on the page.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Yeah, it's one of those things, like I don't think he could have nailed it as perfectly as he did if he didn't live there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just it's one of those things that he knows intimately, because that's where he grew up.
Mm-hmm.
That he was like, it's not just about the way the trees look or the way these characters look, but it's the characters' lives and the way things move, and you know, stuff like that, which sounds strange to someone who is just like, it's just a comic book, you know.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah, like there's something about it that you really get a sense for the town and the people inside it, which is good. Which is good. People often try to say, "Oh, the town is a character, the city's a character," you know, but that's often like it's the, oh, it's dark and gritty, like it's that same type of thing where it's just like, oh, okay, I understand what you mean, but no. But this actually nails it. This is I felt like Essex County had a lot of character to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just within the artwork itself. Is it odd that as I was writing this, I kind of imagined it in color? It's not. It's in black and white, but I kind of saw everything just in my mind in color.
I don't know. I might have kind of done that.
Not that I wanted it in color, but I guess maybe that's a compliment in the sense that, like, hey, this seems so authentic and so genuine that I can actually imagine this.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that might have been why it's like, oh, I'm kind of seeing it in color, even though it's not. So who knows? Who knows? Let's talk about Lester a bit, the main character of that first story. He's an interesting kid. I think he's one of the main characters that we talked about. Excuse me. That I think was talked about the least in the story, because his whole story is there's things happening around him, and he just kind of wants to be in his own little world. Sounds like his dad didn't stick around. His mom has died, so he's being raised by someone that he doesn't really understand or get along with, and they can't connect.
Yeah, it's his when his mom died, and okay, the dying mom, she's dying of cancer, so she has like no hair left. She has just a couple little lines on her head to represent hair, and she's got like, you know, a big simple nose and big simple eyes and a big simple mouth. And I'm looking at her, and she just reminded me so much of Doug Funny. Like I was Do you see it?
Yes. Now
I was kind of
now that
taken
you
out
mention
of
it.
the. I was kind of taken out of the sad mother dying of cancer because I'm like, she looks like Doug Funny.
I mean, people can have two dads. You know, Doug Funny grew up and died of cancer.
Oh
Yeesh.
no. Yeah, not even pork chop there by his side.
No. Quail
But
Man can save him. That's who Lester wants to be.
Lester is also quite Doug-like.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Doug, fun fact: that cartoon is based around Richmond, Virginia, which is where I live.
It is?
Yeah, there's a
Wow.
high school not too far from here, and that's supposed to be where it's based off of.
Wow, you live by real Bluffington.
Yep. Except it's not that, and I forget which part of Richmond it's actually supposed to be. But yeah. Anyways, back to Essex County.
Yeah, the mom dies and leaves Lester in the care of her brother because the parents are too old to take him in, and dad kind of disappeared from the scene.
Yeah.
And then we find out who dad is and where dad went.
And we kind of don't find that out until like end of the second story or in the third story is when you can kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
Of who his actual father is, because that first one they don't mention it. I read that first story and still didn't know what to expect with the other two.
You still didn't get who the dad was at the end of the first story?
I kind of had a hint, but they didn't say it. They didn't say, "Hey, this is your dad." Like
I
knew something was up. I'm like, there's something more about this guy that we don't know yet.
So like him saying the same, like, "Oh, red sky at night, sailor's delight," and Lester asking, "Did you ever have any kids?" And he's like, "Let's change the subject."
So that gives you the big hint, but it's not until that last line that you can kind of piece it together. But then it's still not explicit until like the end of the second or third story. I forget when. But then it's like, oh yeah, this actually is this guy's dad. It's not just a coincidence to like give this kid hope or something, you know.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, it's because we didn't see all of their time hanging out together, so it's to play devil's advocate, maybe Lester told him this saying, and he's the one that started saying it, and then they just both picked it up, you know.
That's true. Yeah, it is strongly implied, but you're right, not explicitly stated until the third story. That's his dad.
Yeah. But yeah, like I knew something was up, and something's like, okay, they're not telling us everything here. But if you had to pick a favorite of the stories, which one would you pick? Because I think I would pick the first one.
I really like the third one. It's the shortest one, and it's kind of the least cohesive just because it is the last one and it's doing a lot of pulling together the threads from the first two, and it's less of its own standalone story the way the first two are. Yeah. But I liked Anne best as the protagonist.
She's
out of Lester and Lou is the protagonist of the second one. I liked Anne the most. I like that Anne had the most positive attitude about everything. She was the most optimistic. She was dealing with everything around her in like a pretty positive, healthy way. She was actively trying to help others. She had like hobbies and she kind of had a life and she had friends. She felt the most, and maybe not like the deepest, most emotional character, but she felt the most well-rounded just as a person, and I responded to that.
Yeah. Yeah, she's interesting because she is the one that interacts with all of the other characters. So yeah, like if this was a novel or a movie or something, I feel like she would be a good like in character,
Yeah.
the one that, hey, I can relate to or something, because she's the one that sees this entire town, you know. But that's not to say she didn't have her own problems. Like,
Yeah.
her husband is dead. She can't really connect with her son, who's a little bit older. He's more of the like rebellious 20-year-old still
Yeah.
living in mom's basement, you know.
You're allowed to still live with your mom when you're 20.
I mean, sure, but like it's still like he was the one. He has like punk posters up and comic book posters up, and he has like the scruffy beard and stuff, and it just looks like he's like off to work and gonna go smoke a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, all right, dude, like time to find your own place, you know.
Yeah.
It's especially if your mom can't really deal with you that much, or you know, you're not helping her to deal with you, you know. But anyways, yeah, she's the one that has the most positive attitude, and you're right that her story kind of ties everything up. I think I would go with the first one just because of how simple it is.
It is, yes.
I think it's the simplest story, and it's our first introduction to the world of Essex County. But I feel like it has the easiest conclusion. I maybe I'm copping out by saying it's the simplest. It's the easiest. It's the first one, you know.
Yeah.
But I really like the moment of him taking off his cape and mask, and him hanging it up and kind of realizing, hey, I kind of need to be a little bit more responsible. It's not necessarily, hey, I need to move on and stuff like that, but you know, it's
growing up.
Yeah, he just has other responsibilities. Maybe I can like connect with my uncle more and stuff like that. And I just think it's a good conclusion for his story. It's oddly happy, even though it's still sad to see him kind of move on, right?
Yeah. I like the first story. I'm still thinking about that like alien battle, because like Lester wears like his cape and his masks. He's like, oh, aliens are coming to fight us. And then Jimmy, this older man he befriends and has a connection with, is it blood? Yes. Spoiler alert, it's blood. That's his dad. Like Lester, Jimmy plays along with this, like, oh, well, if aliens are coming to get us, maybe we'd better build a fort. And the story kind of, towards the end of it, it kind of takes this turn from like, you know, just something imaginary to like this fantasy thing where like, yes, a UFO comes down and shoots them with a laser, and like Jimmy dies, and Lester like puts him on a raft and sends him down the creek. Is this like, you know, country funeral sort of thing? And I thought, oh, is this like a fantastical representation of some actual way that Jimmy is dying? Like, did a hunter like shoot him with a stray bullet or something like that? But then in the third story, which takes place after this, there he is alive as normal. Like, why did we have this imaginary scene where he died? Like, I don't understand how that fits into the whole thing.
Yeah, that was a little strange, but they did have their whole like imaginary war and stuff like that, and so I think it is more of the symbolic. Hey, I need to kind of move on.
Okay.
Let's. I mean, it's because when he hung up his cape, he was kind of divorcing the idea that he's still a child. If that, even though he still is, but it's also. Not that he's giving up on like who his new friend is or finding out who his dad is. He didn't necessarily know when all of that was happening. And so it's just this idea of like, hey man, I like, it was fun to hang out and play while it lasted, but I kind of need to put an end to this. And so yeah, I mean, it just ends up being this symbolic death of like, okay, we're not gonna speak, and then at the end it's like, well, maybe we kind of have to. It's part of growing up. I'm actually your dad.
I just felt like a whole imaginary like Viking funeral, like sending him away on a raft. I'm like, that seems like kind of a lot for just we're not talking anymore. It felt very strong, and I'm like, this is a lot. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to get more out of this than I am, and I'm mostly just confused. Like, oh, I thought he really died, and now he's still alive out there working the gas station.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I didn't really think about it until you mentioned it. So who knows? Who knows what happened? Maybe the intention was that he did die, and then it was like, oh wait, I kind of want that guy to be more important. Let's bring him back. I mean, it's comic books after all, right?
Yeah. If Jean Grey can come back, so can, Jimmy.
So story number 2. I think that we mentioned that's the biggest story. This is the most complex one, I think.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I would say most complex. I was gonna say maybe the third one because we have the parallel stories happening at the same time. But I guess second one, in my opinion, is the most complex because he's in and out of like what's real and what's not and stuff like that. Which is, I guess, also like the first one, but still, yeah, we get Lou, good old Lou LaBeouf, or Lou LaBeouf or something like that, Shia LaBeouf or something.
Louis the Beef.
Yeah, Louis the Beef. But that was an interesting one. What did you think about this second story?
It's
These dogs are barking nonstop.
That one had the most emotional highs and lows. Like, I think it's the saddest of all three of them.
Yeah.
But when Lou is happy, like, you really feel it. Like, I love his relationship with hockey in this story. And I'm not a sports person, but I do love other people being passionate about sports and like how it just lights up their life and what it gives them. And that bit where he like, he's losing his hearing. He can't work his job anymore and he's retired, but he needs something to keep himself busy. And he becomes like a little peewee hockey league coach. That's so sweet. Like,
yeah. It's an God damn. These dogs. I don't know if you guys can hear it on my mic. Maybe when I talk you can because it has the mic on. Yeah, but one of the dogs, if another one of them is on the bed, the other one will just stand there and bark until the other one gets off. Like, you guys can both be on the bed. God damn it. But so there they go. So I really liked this story just because of all the places it went.
Yeah.
It went everywhere from his hockey career to his relationship with his brother to him, I guess, having an affair with his brother's wife that one time and how that ruined the relationship. And just that tension of not knowing if his niece is actually his daughter or not.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it was a wild story. I kind of don't know where to dive in with this one just because there's so much that happened in a short amount of time, which I guess is a testament to how good this story is, because it was only, I think, 200 pages for that second story. Which is not a lot, and that I think it packed in a lot of content within that.
I want to just say briefly that after spending so much time in the desolate countryside in the first story, I
We now
loved
get the
getting to
city.
go to
Yeah.
like Toronto in the second story. That was like, and it's also like beautifully, simply illustrated, and it was just like a nice breath of fresh air to actually be in a civilization. Like, oh, good, there's more than 3 people around at any given time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad to kind of see Lou go like that. How she
Yeah.
just slowly, one thing after another, just
Hmm.
goes wrong or goes bad, or it's like, well, that was my dream, but
Hmm.
I guess that's not happening, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, the weird thing for me with this story was the end of it when he kind of realizes
Hmm.
that he's all alone, and then the bird flies in, which we learn about the we learned about the bird in the third
Hmm.
story. Um, but he has this like odd smile that he like
Yeah.
knows what the bird or like who the bird is, but like you have almost no reference for that, at least
Yeah.
that we know. So it was just like
It
this, why are you smiling at this bird? Like what, like, have you gone crazy now too, you know?
uh I liked the stuff with the bird because it doesn't really click for you until the third story. You see
Yeah,
the bird a lot in the first story, but Lester's imaginary superhero is like a bird guy, so you think of it as just like a
that's
corollary to that.
true. I
Like
didn't even think of that.
yeah, like Lester is inspired by the bird, and the bird kind of flies around as this like representation of how Lester wishes he could be freer, how he wishes he could just
Right.
do something bold and adventurous. And the bird is there a lot in the second story, and I didn't quite get it yet. And the third story clicks in. The bird is almost a representation of the past of Essex County and the surrounding area. It is like, it's like the stars in the Lion King where Mufasa's like, those are your ancestors up
Yeah.
there, always watching over you. That's
Yeah.
kind of what this crow is. It's always circling around, and it carries with it the weight and the
So
wisdom
you,
of every past citizen of Essex County, and it's always watching over you in this kind of like guiding, peaceful sort of way.
yeah. So you felt it was kind of the embodiment of Essex
Yeah.
County,
Yeah,
because
yeah, and
I kind of read it as that is, I guess to be more precise in that it's not Essex County specifically, but it was what's his name that
uh,
screwed the nun in the third story.
she wouldn't approve of you using that language, Kyle.
Well, you know what? She's not around to hear it, so fuck that. Um, but no, because like that was his pet bird. I'm
Yes.
sure it's not the exact same bird that is
Mm,
in through all these
no.
stories, but I like to imagine it is, and that it's like it's his spirit that kind
Mhm.
of like embodied that bird and is now
Yeah.
watching over
I
them.
think it's definitely him, but
So it's more like more an ancestor, like, hey, here's your
yeah,
great 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 grandfather, you know.
I think it's him, but it's also like it is picked up kind of the spirit of the larger area alongside just that one man whose name I don't remember. It started with a G. It's something
Uh,
French.
yeah, I think she described him as like burly and gross.
Yeah, and this is in like 1917, so he's just some like old fur trapper guy. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's the spirit of the area and of its ancestry
that
bound
makes
up
sense.
into like one being. But that doesn't really click in until the third story. And so looking back on the second story just as it is, I wonder if okay, so Lou moved from Essex County to Toronto, and he after a while, like after his hockey career died and like he
Hmm.
got the job driving the streetcar, and he's like, the city isn't part of me, I am part of the city. The city has absorbed me. I'm just
The
one
bird is
tiny
coming to
piece
eat
of it.
him.
No, like
He's coming to absorb Lou.
No. He's lost his connection with the countryside entirely. And to think about it, like, you're not really going to see a crow in the middle of a metropolitan city. A crow belongs in the country. So that's like, it is the spirit of his home come to like guide him home. Like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Here you are, like
Now
just
he's
as
at
I left you. Yeah.
home. Yeah.
Like, I think it's also before we learn about the history of the people and how they came to Essex County. I think it represents on a more simplistic level just the rural countryside. Like, this is something I would never see in the city, but here it is back out home in the country, just this beautiful symbol of like freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd totally turn this into a horror comic if the bird came to eat these people. Sounds like something Junji Ito would make.
Oh yeah. Oof.
Yeah, that one I think was, I don't know. I'm wondering if I should change my favorite story to that second one just because of how much there was. That one I think is the saddest one though.
It is.
Cuz yeah, that guy really loses everything.
Yeah, and it's a combination of tragedy. Like, he has this one night affair with his brother's wife, and then she has this daughter, and it's not 100% clear if that is his daughter or his niece. And then she has a son, and then at the end, like, the sister-in-law and the niece die in this terrible car accident. So it's like tragedy like that, but it's also just very small things. Like, I do the same job every day. I go to the same bar every day. I slowly lose my hearing and they have to keep turning up the sports TV in the bar. Like, it's the slow everyday sadness that just accumulates as he grows older.
One thing I wanted to say too is I like how that second story kind of transitions between past and present, like what he's remembering versus what is actually happening now. I think the one where it hit me the most of just like, ooh, that was a really good transition was when you find out about the accident.
Oh, yeah.
Because they mention something about an accident, and it's like, okay, well, that's not a good sign. I wonder what's happening there. And so then he starts to recount what happened, or I guess what he had been told of the accident, and it starts to like he starts to kind of go into denial about it, I think, and it's just like he's wondering where they are and stuff like that, and it starts to flicker back and forth. And the nurse, her name is Anne, right? She's sitting there like, no, like they died in an accident, and it's just like, oh man, fuck, that hits really hard. That one sucks.
My favorite transition is when he's thinking back to this affair he has with his brother's wife. It's just after this big party, like they won a hockey championship or something, or they're going to the playoffs, and they have this party, and like the brother is like drunk, like asleep, drunk, like not because he's an aggressive drunk, just because he's kind of a teetotaler and he has a couple beers and he's out. And so it's just Lou and Beth left, and it starts snowing, and she's like, oh, let's go outside. Let's go up on the roof and let's watch it snow down over the city. And that's where they have sex, which seems like a bad idea to do it outside in the snow on a roof.
In the cold.
I don't know what that's about, but okay. And
when you feel the urge, man.
And you can see there's this big full moon up there, and you see inside the moon is old Lou's face. Like
looking in.
Like he's just punched a peephole into his own past, and he's just peering down at this tiny, like disastrous younger version of himself. That's an incredible panel.
Yeah, that one was neat too. I like that one. And then as he's kind of remembering it, the background fades away, and then she fades away, and then he's just like, and then there's just me.
Yeah, like the lines become simpler and simpler until it's just like a couple like charcoal wisps in a box.
Yeah.
Like that's the last panel.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
This would be an interesting film. I feel like just like a collection of these 3 short stories all in one film.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see that. So, I do want to ask about the kind of extra material that was in the book. The 2 like secondary short stories that we got, the boxing club one. I want to know your thoughts on that, and I guess the 2-page
Eddie Elephant Ears.
Oh yes, that's the one. I was thinking of the. I guess it's also an extra story, but that 2-page one of Lester and I forget his father's name.
Jimmy.
Yeah. When they're in their hideout, and he's like, so, do you like any girls? He's like, no. He's like, oh, you do, don't you? He's like, I know what that's like.
Kyle, as a boy, is that something that happens to boys, that a man is like, tell me what girls you like?
Kind of.
Really?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, guys would talk about it when we had like sleepovers in like elementary school and middle school, stuff like that.
Because I feel like that has happened to me way less times, that like some aunt or somebody would be like, so do you have a guy in your life? It's happened to me way less than pop culture would lead me to believe it would. And I'm just curious what your rate of success is. I think it's
enough of an awkward situation that it sticks, it horrifies people. Like, oh God, why is my aunt asking about my sex life? You know, like, no. But that was a funny one. But yes, what did you think about the boxing club short story?
I liked it. I liked that the back matter stories were a little bit quirkier. They still had that like that kind of melancholy to them, but they weren't as tragic as like the second story was, or a lot of the other stuff in the 3 main stories. Yeah. I like that it was a little bit weirder. I was really intrigued by Eddie Elephant Ears.
That's an interesting one.
It's so strange, and it reminded me kind of like of Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Yeah, I kind of remember those.
Like just one weird, like almost urban legend, like larger than life tall tale kid that had a weird thing happen.
They seemed more like urban legends rather than like, hey, this is an actual story that happened.
Like the first 3 stories were this real slice of life, and then those extra
rural legends. Because it's not in, they're not in an urban setting.
Yeah. Like the first 3 stories are this real slice of life, just like personal small family drama stories. And the back matter stories, these bonus things, are a lot more like tall tales.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked that as supplementary material to what we've just read. Like a little community like that would be a lot of different things. Sometimes it would be sad and wistful, and other times it would be, you know, kind of kooky, like, yep, all these farmers just get together and on Friday night they go box each other in the barn. I love that one of the boxers was like the local priest, and his name is like Father Pat Heavenly Fists.
Yes. I mean, that's I feel like something. Maybe I'm going into movie stereotypes. I feel like a lot of boxing stories, there's like a heavy Catholic influence on them. Daredevil, right? Like his dad was a boxer. He's kind of a boxer. The story of Daredevil is all about Catholic guilt and stuff like that. When you see like prison stories, like the like local, I mean, guess like the prison father, whatever you call them, like they'll sponsor the boxing club or something like that. You know, they're to me, in books and movies, they're typically involved in something
You
like
might
that.
have a point, because I'm thinking back. I don't know if you've ever watched MASH. Some dads
I
are
haven't.
MASH dads and
I know
pass that
what it
chain
is, but
along to their kids. Like, you're going to know too much about MASH now. That's what happened to me and my brother. Like, in that little army camp, there is a chaplain, and he is the sweet, meek, mild-mannered man of God, but like in college he was on the boxing team, and he's this wiry little guy, but if he needed to throw a punch, he could throw a punch.
yeah, it's like I guess some of the lessons are the same, like how to get back up when you fall down, how to turn the
Yeah.
other cheek, how to defend
Yeah.
yourself, stuff like that. But yeah, Heavenly Fists. It's a great name. I really liked that story. I thought that
Yeah.
it was fun. I that's kind of one of the stories I wish there was more of in this book. Like I wish
Yeah.
it wasn't like this is a book that I think, despite the like looming sadness and just sense of loss, stories like about this boxing club kind of do the opposite of that. And it's like I want more of that in here, because I know those stories are out there in
Yes.
Essex County. I mean, in the world in general, but like I want more Essex County. Like, despite it being as sad as it was, I want more of it. I think it had a really good character interactions and just good like snapshot moments.
Yes.
Right. And for this boxing one in particular, like, you get the revelation that, yeah, when his friend died, the like spirit of his friend stayed with him, and that's like what inspires him to box. It's like, that's neat. That's a good story,
I think one of the most emotional moments in this entire collected book is in the second story, when Vince dies and Lou is like holding his brother as he dies.
Yeah.
And it's the frame, it's just on like Lou's face, and there's this like sound effect in the box, like tap, 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 tap. And I'm like, what does that mean?
That
Like,
was
what's
a
going
good
on?
one
Tap, tap,
too.
tap, tap. And then
All
it
the
zooms
hockey.
out. Yeah, it zooms out, and it's, I guess, like the specters of all of their old hockey team, all dressed up and, in their uniforms, just tapping their sticks on the ground. It was beautiful.
It's like in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when the Ravagers
Yes!
show up for Yondu.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah.
Just the Canadian version.
Yeah, that was a really good moment. So, do you have anything else to say about Eddie Elephant Ears? What intrigued you the most with that one?
Just the fact that it felt on the far end, kind of outside of what the rest of the stories were about. That it's got that same sadness to it, but it's also like so much weirder. And like the other stories have this kind of mix of like kind of fantasy and reality, like Lester imagining that he's a superhero and that,
alien invaders.
Yeah, but this is like, no, this man was in a terrible car accident. His face is like nothing but bandages, and he has such bad memory now that he can only remember 4 things, and he ties 4 strings to each of his fingers so that he remembers those 4 things.
It seems more like an old wives' tale rather than an urban legend.
Like, the weirdness about it isn't that kind of fantasy based. It's like straight there in the world proven weirdness.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was a neat change. I don't know how it could be expanded on and brought more into the stories of the other characters, because it is kind of like it fits in and it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of like just what it is, just this couple pages long supplemental story in the back. And like the only real connection he has to the rest of the story is is that he knows Anne. And like, if you tried to make him part of the big complicated family tree, I don't know, it'd be I don't think
Yeah.
it would work.
Despite me liking the boxing story so much, I think having the boxing story and this one not in the main
Yes.
story, I think that helped out a lot. Because
Yes.
it does kind of ground the other stories in more reality.
Yeah.
Whereas these, do have a little bit more fantasy or magical realism to them. So it helps. Good editing choice, but I'm glad I still got to read them. Yeah. Anything else that you want to talk about with this book?
I just want to say real briefly, going back to the way hockey has an impact on like the brothers' lives in the second story, it reminded me of something I haven't thought of in a couple years, which was my mom's mom was a big baseball fan, even up until she was like in her later years and she could barely hear it. She would still always put the Cardinals game on. She'd always be watching it. And she died in October during playoff season, and we buried her in all Cardinals gear.
There you go.
Like, she's wearing a little jersey, and she had like a pin I'd got her, and I think like a hat and everything. And I hadn't thought about that in a little while. I'm like, oh yeah.
Interesting.
Like that was like a personal connection I had to that. Like, you're right. Like, if you love sports, that stays with you until your dying day and beyond.
Yeah. Interesting. That could be an Essex County story of its own. So someone was such a big fan of the hockey team that they buried them in full-on hockey gear or something. Who knows? Yeah. This was a good book. It was interesting because it was much sadder than we expected, I believe, which is not really what I was looking for or hoping for this week. It was kind of a downer, but it was still it's still a good book. Like I'm glad I read it. I said that there's still other things of Jeff Lemire's which have been on my list for a long time to check out, including Underwater Welder. No idea what that is about, but I've heard good things.
Sounds stressful.
I want to check out some more of his work. But Melissa, what other things out there do you think people might like if they enjoyed this book?
Especially the first story reminded me of kind of the country flip side to Hey Arnold.
Interesting.
Hey Arnold, which is set like in the middle of a city, but it has that same vibe of like lots of little stories of like growing up and learning about the people around you, and everybody's got a story to tell, and a lot of them are sad, but there's this community that surrounds everybody, no matter where you are or where you're from. Like, Hey Arnold is also a lot of kind of wistful, slightly melancholy, like kind of fantasy integrated slice of life stories. Like, there's the story of like Pigeon Man, who lives up on the roof with all of his pigeons.
That one.
Yeah, he lives up on the roof with all of his pigeons, and he doesn't feel like he belongs in society, so he ties a string to each of his pigeons and then to his waists, and like the pigeons just lift him up and he just flies away into the sunset. Like, there's the story about the ghost train that the kids all go and investigate. Yeah. This just felt like sad, lonely Canadian countryside Hey Arnold.
Interesting. That's a good call. So I mentioned Sweet Tooth at the top of the show.
What is Sweet Tooth about? Because you've mentioned it before.
Sweet Tooth is about this little boy who's a hybrid between like human and deer. He has antlers. And he has a big sweet tooth, which is where he gets his name. So he eats a lot of candy. But they're in this kind of, I guess, post-apocalyptic world, and it's one of those things like, when it happened, that's kind of what caused all of these hybrid creatures. And there's something with a cure and this old, like, grizzled Canadian ex-hockey player
Right, well, you know.
Right? Yeah. Who's kind of like the like John Wayne of the story, or like the old man Wolverine kind of thing, is taking Sweet Tooth kind of across the country to like figure out this cure and stuff like that. It's a really good book. It's also kind of has these sadder overtones to it, but it is, if you like post-apocalyptic stuff, if you like good character drama and interactions, I like this story Essex County had. That's another story by Jeff Lemire that I think you guys would really like. I'm trying to think what else. I guess we also mentioned it that we did an episode on Department H.
Yes.
So scroll back in our episode history. I don't remember what number it was, but we covered I guess the first 2 or 3 volumes of Department H.
I think we covered the first half of it, however that breaks down to like number of issues or volumes.
Yeah. And that's by Matt Kint. And I think I don't remember if he's doing both the writing and the artwork or not. I don't remember. But that would be one to check out, because I think the artwork is very similar.
Yeah.
It is colored. It has like watercolor tones and stuff like that.
Beautiful,
and it's a beautiful
comic. Yeah, and
exactly.
Like the way humans and like their faces and their features are drawn in this kind of exaggerated way, with like big square noses and like little beady eyes and like simplistic features, but still really expressive.
Yeah.
That has a lot of that.
Exactly. That one, however, is an underwater murder mystery.
Very different.
So if you are interested in crime noir or underwater noir, what would be a good aquatic noir?
Wet noir.
Okay. That would be a book to check out, Department H, which, if you are clever, unlike I was for the first like year and a half I knew about this book, I didn't realize it spelled depth. Department H spells depth, and I felt like such an idiot when I figured that out. I was like, God damn it, why am I not smart enough to know this? But yeah, go check that stuff out. But yeah, I think that wraps us up for Essex County. But now, Melissa, it is your turn to pitch what we are going to be talking about for next week, and I get to pick.
Yeah. And I teased you what my framework was going to be, what my theme was.
So, Belinda, if you're listening to this, check this out. I'll probably message you right after this, because you're gonna want to hear about this one.
The release of Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming up, which I know you're a huge fan of that franchise. I've never played it, but as a Disney fan, I have a good passing familiarity with it. And so my 3 pitches this week are 3 Disney movies, one that already has been represented in a Kingdom Hearts game, one that is going to be a part of Kingdom Hearts 3, and one that isn't a part of the franchise at all, but I think could be a fun addition.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, hit me. What do you got? What's pitch number 1?
Pitch number 1 is a movie I didn't even know was in Kingdom Hearts until I looked up the different Kingdom Hearts worlds. This is Tron.
Yep. Tron is in Kingdom Hearts 2.
I didn't hear about that one. This is a 1982 film. This is directed by Steven Leisberger. And the description of this movie is: when talented computer engineer Kevin Flynn finds out that Ed Dillinger, an executive at his company, has been stealing his work, he tries to hack into the system. However, Flynn is transported into the digital world, where he has to face off against Dillinger's computerized likeness, Sark, and the imposing Master Control program. Aided by Tron and Yori, Flynn becomes a freedom fighter for the oppressed programs of the grid.
The oppressed programs of the grid.
So this is an old technical wonder
Yeah.
that I think, even if it has been outpaced, is still regarded as like a major milestone in computer graphics. And I've never seen the whole thing. And I think it's time for, like, as my nerd cred, I need to sit down and become more familiar with Tron.
Okay.
And if you
That's
pick this, you
a
are
good
allowed
pick.
to add the optional add-on of also watching Tron Legacy. I have seen that one, weirdly enough.
I
I saw the
think I
sequel.
saw
They
that one
didn't
in
do the original.
theaters.
Yeah, yeah. So if you pick Tron, we could go ahead and do a double feature.
Okay.
Hmm.
Interesting. Interesting. Pitch number two. This is
Pitch
the
number
one
two.
that's going to be in.
Yes,
Okay.
this is Big Hero 6. This is a 2014 film. Let me double check who directed this. Don Hall and Chris Williams. And the description of this is: robotics prodigy Hiro lives in the city of San Francisco. Next to his older brother Tadashi, Hiro's closest companion is Baymax, a robot whose sole purpose is to take care of people. When a devastating turn of events throws Hiro into the middle of a dangerous plot, he transforms Baymax and his other friends Gogo Tamago, Wasabi, Honey Lemon, and Fred into a band of high-tech heroes. This is a really
The,
fun movie. You can see
it
that I
is.
own it.
I love this movie.
This was the first Disney animated feature based off a really obscure Marvel property.
I've read the comics. They're awful.
That's
They
what
are
I've heard.
so bad and slightly racist.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So, like, I think it's kind of nice that what we would be watching would be the best version of that story.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely the best.
Mhm.
I'm still waiting on the sequel. I want Big Hero 6 too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fantastic movie. I remember I saw it in the theaters. I think I saw it with an ex of mine.
Mm,
I don't remember. Anyways, good movie.
very good.
I love it a lot.
Mhm.
And Stan Lee has a cameo
He
in
does.
it.
So this is like some weird tangential, like, sixth cousin 4 times removed to the MCU.
Yeah. Somehow Stan
Yep.
Lee made it
Mhm.
into animated form.
Yeah. Pitch number 3 is something that isn't in Kingdom Hearts, but I think should be.
This is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Especially because I've played the games and you haven't. And so just for your opinion to be like, well, I haven't played them, but I feel like this should be in there. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I nominate this movie because I feel like this is the beginning of pop culture's obsession with smashing things up and crossing things over and putting all kinds of weird stuff together. It's Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, goodness.
This was released in 1987 by Disney's Touchstone Pictures label, which was a label they use for things that are maybe like a little too mature or a little too odd to fit under the regular Disney banner, but it is a Disney property. Roger Rabbit was a huge presence in the Disney parks when this movie was big, and he's kind of become not forgotten over time, but just pushed to the wayside. And I think it's time we give him his day in the sun. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? This is from, I think, 87. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis. And this is a milestone blending of, kind of like Tron, live action and animation.
Uh-huh.
It's 1947 Hollywood, and Eddie Valiant, a down-on-his-luck detective, is hired to find proof that Marvin Acme, gag factory mogul and owner of Toontown, is playing hanky-panky with femme fatale Jessica Rabbit, wife of maroon cartoon superstar Roger Rabbit. When Acme is found murdered, all fingers point to Roger, and the sinister, power-hungry Judge Doom is on a mission to bring Roger to justice. Roger begs the toon-hating Valiant to find the real evildoer, and the plot thickens as Eddie uncovers scandal after scandal and realizes the very existence of Toontown is at stake.
Interesting. Ooh, boy. So pitch number 1 was Tron. Pitch number 2 is Big Hero 6. And pitch number 3 was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Goodness, let's see. I don't know. These are all good ones. I kind of want to do... kind of want to do Big Hero 6.
Okay.
Because I don't think I've seen it in a while, and I kind of want to refresh my memory.
Okay, awesome.
And hopefully that will inform me a little bit more for when I start playing Kingdom Hearts 3 when it comes out at the end of this month. Yeah. Big Hero 6.
That'll be a fun one. This is also a movie I really like, but haven't rewatched in several years.
Yeah. I know they've done like a manga adaptation. I think there was a cartoon show based off of it as well. So it's I guess not really surprisingly, but it's had like multiple spin-offs now because of how well this movie did.
Mm-hmm.
So good for them. Good for them. I guess that wraps us up. We will be covering Big Hero 6 for next week. I'm excited.
Yeah. This will be fun.
Yeah. If you guys enjoyed this show and you want to support us on Patreon, that would be a huge help. We could absolutely use your support. For just $1 a month, you can help keep our mics on and the lights on and everything else here. All of that money goes back into our shows. Patreon.com/the Whatnauts is where you can throw away your life savings into our PayPal account. That being said, Melissa, where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WilkyWit. That's WILKYWIT. I might post a picture of the giant snowstorm that exists outside my apartment.
There we go.
Trapping me in a living snow globe.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Yo Kyle Springer. And if you guys want updates about this show or any of our other podcasts, you can follow us on Twitter at the Whatnauts. And I believe that is it. Go follow us on Twitch. Go follow us on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, sell your soul, hit the bell, do whatever you need to do with all the social media stuff. That being said, we will see you next week. Adios, guys.
Bye.